Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are very honored to have the Alzheimer's Association with us this morning because it's when you have someone with this, you generally kind of want to face it and don't realize that there are a whole lot of resources and expertise that's available to you, okay? And I never realized it until I started talking to them. And we have Sally Langer here with us, and she is a retired speech, she gave me an introduction, I'm gonna read it. Okay, is a retired speech language pathologist who has spent a great deal of her career working with older adults in both nursing and assisted living facilities. While treating patients, she encountered numerous individuals who were experiencing dementia and Alzheimer's. And for over 20 years, she has evaluated and treated these individuals. Sally had a successful second career in health employment, training and developing at both the Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, Texas, and with the South Carolina Department of Mental Health in Columbia. She received her bachelor's degree at the University of Cincinnati, her master's at Vanderbilt, and her doctorate at Memphis State. All three degrees were earned in speech language pathology and speech science. She is currently enjoying retirement and volunteering for the South Carolina chapter of Alzheimer's Association as a community educator. To date, Sally has presented numerous educational programs to churches, civic organizations, independent living, assisted living, and nursing homes. She recently participated in the 2024 Alzheimer's Advocate Day at the State House as an advocate and working in the Columbia office 2 days a week, performing whatever task needed attention. She is married to Steve, who is right back there, okay? And they have 8 grandchildren. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I understand you've got a retreat going on too, so we'll record it for those individuals and anybody who can't be here so they can watch it later. I want to tell you how I really got interested in Alzheimer's in particular. My grandmother was about 87 years old when we started noticing little nicks and dings on her car that she couldn't explain. And she went to the grocery store one day. She loved Winn-Dixie, so she was at the Winn-Dixie in Atlanta, and she called my mother, and she said, "Virginia, I'm at the Winn-Dixie, and I don't know how to get home." And so my mother was concerned. She went and led her back home, but after that, we started noticing changes in her, and she moved to an assisted living facility, first independent living, where she left the stove on a number of times, and they said, "I'm sorry, this is not safe, you're gonna have to move." And so she moved to assisted living and then ultimately to nursing care, where she didn't recognize my mother after a while. "Oh, you're my sister." And so that was the beginning of the interest, and unfortunately she slipped and fell, broke her hip, and she died of pneumonia after the surgery. So just wanted to let you know a little bit about my interest in this area and why, and plus my working with individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's is very near and dear to me. I'm very passionate about it because of my work in speech language pathology. So today we're going to talk a little bit about understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. So let's get started. We have some learning objectives today that I want to tell you about, and that way if you want to ask questions and I don't fully answer what you want to know, we can talk a little bit about it. I also have some handouts for you, and I'll give those to you after we finish. I want to compare Alzheimer's and dementia. What's the difference? Everybody uses those terms interchangeably. We used to call it Alzheimer's disease a lot of times, or hardening of the arteries, hardening of the categories, those kinds of things. But now we refer to it as Alzheimer's and dementia. Recognize how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain. List the risk factors. Are you at risk? Who's at risk for Alzheimer's disease? Identify the stages of the disease, because there are various stages. Recognize what the current Federal Drug Administration has approved as treatments for Alzheimer's, and are we able to cure it? What's going on right now? Describe how scientists are working to advance the research in this area, and finally talk about some resources, as Tom mentioned, that are available to you through the Alzheimer's Association. So, any questions so far? Okay, good. I prefer for you to ask questions while you have them, as opposed to waiting till the end, because you may forget what you're going to ask. Okay. Let's test our knowledge. Okay, I want to see where you are. All right. Approximately how many Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's? Is it over 3 million, more than 6 million, about 8 million, or about 11 million people?
Over 3. I'd say over 3.
Over 3? Let's see.
Are we talking about known cases or unknown cases?
I'm talking about diagnosed cases, because I am sure there are lots more cases that have not been diagnosed. So I appreciate your asking that. It's more than 6 million people are living with Alzheimer's currently. Okay. Well,
Do you have a forward arrow?
I do. This is so big, I'm trying to get to it. Wait just a
But I mean, on your keyboard, maybe there's a forward.
Yeah,
little
there
arrow.
may be. We'll see. Oh, it would help if I turned it on. Nope.
Might be the laptop using one.
Pardon? Oh, darn. Let me try this again. I'm sorry, y'all. Because normally it just moves forward. Let me see if I can get it a little bit smaller in that way. Ah!
Would you like a technical assistant? I have to deal with this all the time at school.
Okay. Well,
Maybe you can just say next. Let's see. Is this
Whoa!
There's that button, get her started.
see, it won't move forward.
Chair's gone.
Did you break that chair, Mike?
There we go.
I can't remember.
Let's see. And you can't find an arrow there.
No.
Maybe just use your computer screen to find the arrow there. That's probably easier.
Oh, I see. It's shrunk down teeny weeny. Why don't
Yeah.
I sit here and you just say next?
Oh,
on it?
goodness, I hate that.
Oh, I don't mind. I'm a speech language pathologist also.
Oh, okay. Great.
This is in
It-
my wheelhouse.
Well, it usually just moves forward. That's why, okay. It did, it did.
Okay.
Let's go backwards, because it did. My fault. Okay, second question, about how many Americans provide unpaid care for people living with Alzheimer's or dementia. That will be people in the home, daughters, wives, husbands, who are not paid for doing that. We're not talking about paid caregivers. How many unpaid caregivers do you think we have? About 8 million, over 11 million, over 14 million, or more than 18 million?
Say over 14?
Okay, let's try 14. Go. You need to go back. That's
Oh.
I know my program.
Okay. Back.
Hit any of those, and
Oh,
it'll give
okay.
you the correct answer. So it's over 11 million people. That's a lot of people who are providing care for people with Alzheimer's or other dementias. Okay, next.
Next.
Okay, and next, another facts. Go ahead and next. I don't know what. Hold on a minute. All right, keep going. Let's test our knowledge again. Here we go. Okay, true or false? Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process.
False.
Thank you. That is correct. Because Alzheimer's is a brain disease that causes problems with memory, with thinking, and behavior. It is not a part of the normal aging process. So you're pretty smart. True or false? People younger than 65 can get Alzheimer's.
True.
True. Very good. That's great. Although it's not as common as older individuals, it does happen. And I've known people in their 40s, in their late 40s, who have developed Alzheimer's disease. It's really sad. Okay. Now, let's hear from the expert. This is what I was concerned about. Hit. Next. She didn't.
Okay, let's go back to her.
And that's why I'm worried about the. Can you click it?
Nope.
Nope.
Go straight
Okay.
to.
Well,
yes.
we'll go straight to the types of dementia. Now, this is what's really important that I want you, one of the things I want you to take away today. And that is, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? Dementia is the umbrella term. That is the overarching term for lots of different kinds of brain diseases. Okay? And you can see that it's an umbrella term for loss of memory and other kinds of thinking abilities that interfere with daily life. Okay? And
It's just going by itself now.
I gotta go back.
Okay. It seems to be on autopilot.
Well, I don't want it on autopilot. Okay. It's supposed to be able to move forward with, okay, continuing on. I apologize for this. This is not, and we didn't hear from the expert. Okay. So, we're talking about interfering with daily life, and Alzheimer's is the most common type of dementia. About 80 to 85% of the dementias are Alzheimer's, which is why a lot of people just use the term interchangeably, dementia and Alzheimer's, because so many of them are. There are other kinds of dementias, however, and you may have heard of some of these. Vascular is one. You know, our heart pumps about 25% of the entire body's blood to the brain every time that your heart beats. And so,
It just automatically kept going.
gosh,
Probably the voiceover that's still running in the background, it's probably.
It
time,
might
so
be.
if she's talking or whoever the
It
doctor
might
is, it
be.
just pops up in the-
Anyway, vascular dementia is one type. Bruce Willis has frontotemporal dementia. That's a very serious one also. There is Lewy body dementia, which is a very, very serious problem. The hallmark of that one is hallucinations. And that's a very uncomfortable one. There are lots of different kinds. Also, Huntington's disease can have a dementia associated with that. There's mixed dementias as well. So unfortunately, I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. And if we can make it a little smaller, maybe, then there's a forward and backward. Anyway, there should we see previous and next?
Yeah.
So that's, if we could go to previous again and see if we can go back to the,
The types.
and go next.
Okay.
No, that may be,
This is where it was, this little section was all auto before.
yeah, okay, well, let's go previous again, and we'll see where we are. Back again. Again. Again, one more time. And one more time. And again. We'll just see. Okay, you can go forward. I just wanted to see where we were was the thing. So when we get to the types of dementia.
That came at the end of this little section.
Okay.
But you went through all of them for us.
I did. So let's see if I missed any. And no, see, that didn't come through. Okay, here we go. A recap of what we've had so far. And I have a handout for you afterwards that just gives all of the information I've talked about. Dementia is a general term, and it is for a collection of symptoms that are severe enough to interfere with daily life. And we'll talk about some of these symptoms as we go along. It's the most common type of dementia, Alzheimer's is, and it's not a part of normal aging. It is a progressive disease. I cannot tell you how long somebody's going to have it, or what. We'll talk about the stages or how long they're going to be in a particular stage. But it is unfortunate, and it is a disease, and disease means that it progressively gets worse. So, next. Let's talk a little bit about the brain. Forward on that. And that's probably hear from the expert, and can you hit on the actual?
Yeah. All
No.
right. Well,
No.
do we have the sound on?
No, we don't have the sound.
The sound is turned up on the TV, so it's not the TV.
Okay, that's all right.
Okay.
I'm flexible. Okay, we'll talk about Alzheimer's disease. More than 100 years ago, the disease was identified by a German doctor named Dr. Alzheimer, obviously, and he described the specific changes in the brain. Now, the brain is a central processing I don't know how much you know about the brain, but the brain itself controls everything in the body. Very important. It sends signals to the muscles, to the nerves, and it is responsible for everything that we do. And what happens is two things, well, actually three things occur in a dementia, or at least in Alzheimer's. There's the development of specific types of proteins that build up in the brain that are not supposed to be where they are. They're called neurofibrillary tangles and plaques. So there's a buildup of these little tangles that look like little hairs, but they're thicker, and little buildup of these plaque, like, you know, they talk about psoriasis, plaque psoriasis, which are round and build up. These are plaques in the brain that have protein that is abnormal. It used to be that the only way that you could diagnose Alzheimer's disease was by autopsy after somebody died. Now, fortunately, they have very sophisticated PET scans and other ways, other x-rays, which can identify these plaques, these buildup of protein in the brain, and they can also see that the brain itself is shrinking. I'm going to pass along something that identifies what's going on in the brain. I just want everybody to see the changes of what I'm talking about. You can actually see them and read about it. A normal brain and then a shrinking brain. And it absolutely is smaller. The cells, we're born with about 100 billion cells in the brain. And they talk to each other. It's called synapses. And I just wanted you to see what it looks like, what I'm talking about with the brain size and the decrease in brain. So that really makes a difference in terms of our thinking process, what we're able to do, what we're able to remember, how we're able to learn new things or not learn new things. So Alzheimer's causes the nerve cells to die, which leads to the shrinkage of the brain that you're seeing in that picture. So the brain changes result in changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. So next, thank you.
You're welcome.
Risk factors. We're going to talk a little bit about the risk factors. What do you think is the greatest risk factor for Alzheimer's? Can we move to testing? I think it's going to be test your knowledge. So move ahead. And I want to know, what is the greatest known risk for Alzheimer's disease? Is it genetics? Your family member had it, or your grandparent, your uncle, your sister, whatever? Is it family history, or is it age? Anybody want to venture a guess?
Family history.
Family history, okay.
What's the difference between family history and genetics?
Well,
Yeah.
genetics is actually has to do with what's going on in your body
DNA.
in terms of cells and
Right.
DNA, and whether you were born with certain types of cells, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Although Alzheimer's is not a part of the normal aging process, age is the greatest risk factor. In fact, after age 65, Alzheimer's doubles. The risk of Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years. And 34% of people age 85 and older, that's about a third of people 85 and older, have Alzheimer's disease or some type of dementia. It may not be Alzheimer's, but with Alzheimer's, we talk about it because it's such a high percentage. Now, those people who have heart disease, maybe, or are at risk for vascular problems, that can occur in the brain as well with vascular issues. And that can be a different type of dementia. That's why it's so important to try to get an accurate diagnosis from your physician in terms of what's going on. Yes, it's important to know that there are memory issues, and when the doctor says, I want you to remember these 3 words I give you and I'm going to ask you about them later, or he gives you a cognitive test, he's looking to see, you know, what is going on. So, age is the greatest known risk factor. Next. This is so frustrating. Okay.
We can look at the expert. Even if-
We can look at the expert, yeah. Okay, populations at a higher risk. This is very interesting. Black Americans are about twice as likely as white Americans to have Alzheimer's or other dementia. When I speak to African American groups, they want to know why. Why is this the case? Well, we don't know, is the answer. We speculate that vascular disease may have something to do with it. Diet and health habits may have something to do with it, but we're not sure. That's why we're doing a lot of research at this point on different populations, because Hispanic Americans are about 1.5 times as likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia. And 2/3, are you ready for this? 2/3 of Americans living with dementia are women. So, that's not a good thing either. We don't know why. We know they live longer than men in a lot of cases, that they outlive men. So, since age is the greatest risk factor, we may think that that may be one reason. But when it comes to Black Americans or Hispanic Americans, we don't know. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. A risk factor recap. Age is the greatest known risk factor in Alzheimer's, and an individual risk for developing the disease increases at age 65. That doesn't give us a lot of time, does it, in terms of our risk?
Family history.
Family
Relate
history
to
is a known risk factor. Having a parent or a sibling with the disease increases your chance. It doesn't
About
mean...
what percentage? Do you have any idea?
I don't. What I do know is that there are 2 types of risk genes. That's not blue genes, that's genes, okay? That determine whether you're going to get Alzheimer's disease or not. And one of the deterministic genes are the ones that determine that you're going to get Alzheimer's, no doubt. And some people have family history with individuals that have that. I cannot tell you the percent. I will find out if there is and let you know, but I do not know that. And as we said, Black, Hispanic, and women are at an increased risk for dementia. Stages of Alzheimer's disease. Okay. What does living with Alzheimer's disease? Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to, if you'll do the first one, it probably, okay, let's talk about that because the others are talking about it.
Okay.
But we'll talk about the continuum that Alzheimer's, that they have given Alzheimer's. The first area is asymptomatic. That means there are no cognitive symptoms. But it's possible that there are slight changes in the brain that do not occur, or the person doesn't demonstrate those minor changes yet. And we have been told that as early as 10 years, people begin to show changes in the brain, which can result in a later diagnosis of Alzheimer's or other dementia. So the person's asymptomatic. The next is called mild cognitive decline. And I've heard some of you talking in here about going through with parents, aging parents or spouses or what have you. That is an early stage of the loss of certain types of cognition. And cognition means thinking, process, memories, all kinds of things that might occur in a mild stage. And an example of that would be if you lose your keys and you can't find your keys or your glasses or something like that, and you're able to retrace your steps and find those glasses or those keys, that's a normal part of aging. We forget things, but we retrace our steps, we find them, and we get them. Somebody in mild cognitive decline may not only forget where they put things, but they may begin to put things in unusual places that they wouldn't put them otherwise. And so that's an early loss ability. Now, the next phase is the dementia due to Alzheimer's. Okay, once we get to this phase, then there's some issues that interfere with your daily activities. The mild stage typically involves symptoms that interfere with some of your daily activities. Okay? A person begins to have difficulty with numbers or managing their checkbook maybe, learning new things, remembering something that they heard, or they tell you stories over and over and over again that you've already heard and you want to just pull your hair out. That's still in the mild phases. In the moderate phases, more pronounced symptoms that interfere with many daily activities. The person may forget recipes that they cooked their whole life, how to use the microwave. They may not remember to turn off the stove. They may lose things constantly and not be able to find them. And then finally, in the severe stage, it interferes with most daily activities. And at this point, the person needs constant help. They may wander, they may be agitated, they may not remember anything, so it's very difficult in the severe stages. Okay. Recap. 3 broad phases are asymptomatic, mild cognitive decline, and Alzheimer's disease, dementia due to Alzheimer's disease. Second is further broken down into mild, moderate, and severe, and these have to do with how it impacts the activities of your daily life.
Where does a person that becomes like, very angry and upset, where does that fall into mild, moderate, or severe?
It can fall into any of those stages, and the reason that is in the mild stage, for example, they may not think that there are a lot of things wrong, and when you or the family is discussing things or they can't remember things, it's very frustrating to them and they become very angry.
Okay.
Anyway, so this is what's important. No 2 individuals experience, as I've said, either the symptoms or the progression of those symptoms in the same way. Now, there are some similarities, but no 2 are the same, and that's why it's so difficult to talk about what happens when. While the symptoms worsen over time, they progress over stages at different rates as their ability to do things change. Okay? I knew a person who was at one of the large facilities here, and he had taken care of his wife for 19 years. And she was just getting into the phase where she was severe, and she couldn't do much for herself. Okay, so it depends. People are 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, so it just depends on the individual. All right, I've got a little, I wanna talk to you about this just a minute before we go back to the FDA approved therapies. I want to talk about some warning signs of dementia because some of you may have to deal with that in the near future. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. Memory loss that impacts daily life. An example would be forgetting recently learned information. Okay? That's why if you have somebody that you're concerned about, you want to go to the doctor with them because they don't always remember things that the doctor said, and that's really important. Second, changes in planning or problem solving. And you can begin to see changes in that. An example would be having trouble keeping track of their monthly bills. You go into the apartment or the house where they're living and things are just not in order. They're not able to keep up with it. There are things stuffed in drawers and everywhere else. So, you need to think about that. Difficulty in completing familiar tasks, and we talked about that. Difficulty coming up with a grocery list. Organizing a grocery list may be an example of that. Okay? And some of these are in the mild to moderate stages. Confusion with time or place. I know some of us are like, what day is this? Is this the 6th or the 7th? That's a normal part of aging, or you just didn't look at the calendar. We're not talking about that. We're talking about losing track of dates, not showing up for lunch with people when you've made plans with them, forgetting that you had that particular date, not showing up for appointments or things of that nature. So we're not talking about just forgetting a day. Okay, trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. Problems with judging distances. Really scary if somebody's driving at an older age and they aren't judging distances. Their perception is not what it used to be, and even during the daytime if they're driving. If they're driving at night, it's really scary. Okay. I'm not saying it's not cataracts or something of that nature. This is a different situation. Okay. Trouble with driving. New problems with words in speaking or writing. Calling everyday objects by different names. This is not aphasia. This is not a stroke where somebody might not be able to name an object because they've had a stroke. This is a different situation. This interferes with their daily lives. They're calling something, or they can't think of the word that they want to say. Have difficulty expressing themselves. Okay? Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. Remember, we talked about that. If you can find your glasses or your keys, and they're in your normal place, you left them on your dresser, or they're in the bathroom where you're combing your hair or whatever, that's different. If you find your mother's or father's keys in the refrigerator, that is a different story. Okay? If they can't remember where they placed things and they're in unusual places, that's different. Okay? Decreased or poor judgment. Okay? Now we know teenagers are like this. This is a different situation. Okay? The example would be making bad decisions with dealing with money and not able to understand about spending money and what to do with their money. giving money, getting scammed by people. We all have some of that, but hopefully not too many of us. In a situation like this, they're just not responsible with money. They may be giving it away, they may be, doing something that does not make sense to you. Okay, withdrawing from social or from work or social activities. Now, one thing I do need to say, there are some medications that can mimic dementia. And the doctor, you always need to ask the pharmacist or the doctor, are there side effects with this medication? Because some of them may result in some of these behaviors that send you flying to the doctor because the person is a urinary tract infection in an older person, for example, can really result in some unusual behavior. So just be aware of that. Another thing is hearing loss. And vision. As people get older and they lose their hearing and they lose their vision, they become more isolated. And when we talk about not wanting to participate in activities or events, that may be one of the reasons also. So those things, you need to be aware of those things because they can mimic or they can be the same as some of the things that we see in Alzheimer's disease. Okay, and finally, changes in mood or personality. And this is what you were talking about, Tom, with the agitation and with anger, and it's totally, in the initial stages, particularly cognitive decline, it is understandable that if a person is having difficulty with certain things, they get angry, they get upset, and they may take it out on you. But it's really, something different in behavior that's going on. So try not to take it personally. I know it's hard not to. Okay, we're going to talk about some therapies for Alzheimer's for just a minute. It was first described in 1906 by Louis Alzheimer, okay? And in 1996, the first prescription drug was approved. Aricept, I've seen it used numerous times in nursing facilities, and with people to assist in the initial stages to keep the disease from progressing as quickly. Okay? Exelon is another one. It was developed in 2000 that does the same thing. And 2001, we had Resididine, and that we're moving more toward trying to get at taking care of those plaques in the brain and getting rid of those plaques. In 2003, Namenda, which was used a lot, still progresses. Some of these earlier drugs were tried in the early phases, in the mild phases, but as the person progresses, they don't work as well, okay? They just don't work as well. And there was one in 2014 and the one in 2021 that was the drug that was developed in 2021 is one that they said really prevented in the early stages. And they've come up with one in 2023 also, it's not on this, that they're using in early stages, and it is doing a better job of preventing the plaques and the tangles from developing to the extent. But unfortunately, we don't have a cure. There is no way at this point that we can give it, even in the mild cognitive phases or the very mild phases, and have it knock it out completely and cure them. the person. We're kind of like cancer is right now, although they're getting better at developing some of the drugs and using combination with radiation and chemo. They're doing a good job, but they haven't cured that either. So we're at a stage where they're doing a wonderful job. They're developing new drugs all the time, but it's very important that people get the drug as early as possible, because that's when the drugs work the best. Next.
Where's my cursor go?
Next.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying.
Oh, okay.
I lost my
That's okay.
cursor.
Okay. Because everybody experiences Alzheimer's differently, the treatments work in varying degrees with each person. Some people may not be able to tolerate it. There may be side effects. Some people do very well on them for several months. It depends on the person. And they're not effective for everybody. So that's when your doctor comes in. We encourage those people who are interested in learning more to have a conversation with your healthcare professional. Getting an early diagnosis is very important, and talking with your healthcare professional. The other thing that I think is critically important is if you suspect somebody in your family or a friend or whatever is developing symptoms that you think are maybe make you think that the person may be experiencing some type of dementia, and you're not sure if it's Alzheimer's or one of the other types of dementia, that you get together as a family or get a person's family together and discuss how you're going to handle the situation, what you're going to do, who's going to go to the doctor with the person, what you're going to do once the diagnosis is made. It can be a financially devastating disease. There's no question about it. So have a conversation with your healthcare provider. Next, advances in research. Okay, I'm going to talk a little, since we can't go into these because it's a conversation that we're not able to get. We talked about investigating early intervention, and that's very important. Exploring a lifestyle factors and how the person, what diet they're on, their sleep, what they do in terms of exercise, those types of lifestyle things. I don't know if anybody saw it. My husband and I watched something on that was something on TV that talked about studies that they're doing on Alzheimer's disease that have to do with vegetarian diets and very little meat. It has to do with exercise, and they're treating it in, it has to do with getting the people together as a group and having them do certain types of activities which stimulate the brain. So all of those kinds of things are now being developed, and the people are experiencing some success. It doesn't mean they're cured. What it means is it's prolonging the development of the devastation of the disease. Okay, and we're moving toward a cure, but we're not there yet, like we said. And in moving toward a cure, we need your help. And that is in trials, they need normal volunteers to compare with individuals who have the disease. And if you're interested in doing any of that, there are some resources that I'm going to be giving you in the handout to be able to do that. So, and securing the funds, it's something that the Alzheimer's Association is giving out grants and other things to try to help develop these things. I'm very excited to say that in South Carolina, We are currently developing an Alzheimer's disease research center, or we're not developing, we're asking the National Institute of Health for funds to develop these centers. There are 30 of them across the country, and we do not have one in South Carolina. This is a center where they do trials, to test medicines, to test individuals who have Alzheimer's disease and see what differences they can make, lifestyle differences, diet differences, medication differences. We have gotten together with Clemson, USC, and MUSC, and a grant has been written. The legislature gave $10 million to the three institutions together to come up with an idea that they have for this research center and how it's going to be different from ones. They have 2 in North Carolina and 1 in Georgia. Now, people can send their family members to those states, but they take care of their own first. So we need to have something here in South Carolina. It is a desert when it comes to being able to research and see what needs to be done. So we're hoping that this center will be funded. It is funded by the National Institute of Health once it's approved, and we will know that hopefully within the next year or 2. So I just wanted you to know about that. It's very exciting. Okay, clinical studies are the key to advancing research. We have to do these studies. Okay, move on, please.
We're running out of time.
Okay.
So, you know, I guess, what kind of help or assistance is available, you know, to kind of wrap it up, I guess.
Okay.
Thing, you know, look, I think that'd be the best question. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to give out these
You want me to help you
handouts.
hand out some of that stuff?
These ones also?
Yes. Those are, the handout on the back page has a list of resources that you can use. Also, I don't know if you're familiar with Senior Magazine, some of you. It has all kinds of resources in here. I can leave with Tom several copies for people who are interested here for looking at them and using them. I don't have enough for everybody, but if you're dealing with the problem right now with a family member or a spouse, if you'd raise your hand, I would like to give you one of these. But otherwise, I'll give these copies to you, and the church can use them for individuals who, the handouts have on the back is a list of resources that you can use. Also, I have these handouts that we can pass out. This is the Alzheimer's Association number, and that is in, it's 800-272-3900. This is open 24/7, 365 days a year. If you call at 2 o'clock in the morning, there will be somebody to answer who is trained. If you have a problem at 2 o'clock in the morning, the person's not wanting to do what you want to do, you can give them a call. Here's this. There's Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia. And I also have 10 warning signs, the things that we talked about. So, great. These.
Are ours the same or different? Yeah, ours are different, okay.
Okay.
I'll put all these out.
That'll be great. That'll be great. Okay.
Well, we want to thank you very much. I know the next service is getting ready to begin.
I understand this one.
And hate to cut you short, I think it was very informative. You know, we learned a lot of things. One of the things I found out when I initially talked with them is the highest rate of Alzheimer's disease is in South Carolina. And it's in one particular county. And it's Orangeburg County. That's unusual. And you think about it, so what's going on in Orangeburg County that causes this? You know?
And we've talked about a number of things, but we're doing research there. There's a group that, we have a focus group there that's looking at those. That's why we need this research center in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And we hope it will be in Columbia, since that's central to everything in the
Sure.
state. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Yep.
And, but a diagnosis is critical. So if you're thinking, the other exciting thing I do want to mention that they talked about at the National Research Conference is a blood test that they're looking at developing so that primary care physicians can do a blood test and can tell if something is not right in terms of cognitive decline. And so, and can move forward and tell if the person is going to develop Alzheimer's disease. So, very important.
We have really not scratched the surface
No.
here on what, you know, the things that they provide, because I think one of the other things that they told me was respite care for caregivers.
Yes.
They offer something like that, because, you know, if you're dealing with somebody that has it, and you have to be there 24/7 for them, boy, it can be exhausting, and you just need a break. So they offer some kind of service there. Plus, I think there's something else that, like, you know, supplements for caregivers that they, you know, if you have to quit your job, you know, to take care of somebody, you know, you go off that income. And I think there's something available for that too, isn't there? Am I right?
Yes. There's
Okay.
something available. There are places you can get respite care. You can take your family member there for a week or so and do what you need to do. There are
We might ought to
also,
ask her that.
yes, there are, well, I'll be happy to come back. We do a wonderful course also on, healthy brain, healthy body, and that's a good one as well.
That'd be it.
So, we do a lot of
That's what y'all think, I mean, it's, you know, yeah.
I'll be happy
I
to
mean,
come
it's been
back. I
great.
would love to come back.
It's been a great informative session, and we thank you very much for taking that.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. And you can keep those handouts and
I'll put them out.